My name is Harper Wilson. I'm 32 years old, and I live in New York, co-owner of a luxury beachfront resort where weekends glow with fairy lights, string quartets, and extravagant weddings hosted by people who never worry about the price of anything. Looking at me now, no one would guess I was kicked out of my home at 18 for one simple reason. I refused to become the person my parents demanded. They wanted me to study medicine, just like my sister. Her name is Evelyn, 2 years older than me, and for most of my childhood, she didn't even have to speak to win. She just had to exist. Evelyn was the kind of daughter parents brag about in grocery store lines. Straight A's, perfect posture, a smile that said, "I belong wherever I stand." By high school, she was already being described as future doctor, like it was a prophecy carved into her bones. And me? I was the girl with ink stains on her fingers from sketching business ideas in notebooks. The one who could stare at a chart and feel something click inside my brain like music. The one who liked systems, how money moved, how decisions multiplied, how one smart plan could grow into something unbreakable. When I was little, I used to build tiny paper cities. Restaurants, banks, subway stations, whole neighborhoods with roads and zones. I'd sit on my bedroom floor for hours, arranging them like I was designing a world where everything made sense. My mother saw it once and laughed like it was embarrassing. "This girl is only good at making up useless little things," she said, like she was diagnosing a defect. My father didn't even laugh. He just frowned. "Throw that away," he snapped. "If you want to be good at something, memorize the periodic table. Otherwise, don't dream about doing anything important." That was my childhood in a sentence. My imagination treated like garbage, and Evelyn's path treated like destiny. So when I got the scholarship letter, a part of me, stupid, hopeful, still hungry, believed it would change things. I remember the day like it's preserved in amber. I came home from a walk and saw the mailbox stuffed with large envelopes. Bills, flyers, catalogs, then one thick envelope with a university logo so sharp it made my pulse jump. A prestigious school in New York. The one I had applied to for finance. The one I barely told anyone about because I couldn't handle the disappointment if it didn't work out. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. And there it was. Full scholarship, finance major. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My eyes scanned the words again and again, like if I looked away, they'd vanish. Then something broke loose in me, laughter, shaky and bright. I spun in the yard like a lunatic, clutching the letter to my chest. I saw my future in flashes. Elite seminars, Excel sheets like chessboards, internships that led to boardrooms. I saw myself becoming someone who didn't have to beg for approval. But more than that, more than money, more than success, I saw my parents' faces. I imagined my father nodding, my mother smiling, Evelyn looking at me like I wasn't just the shadow behind her spotlight. I waited all day for dinner like it was a ceremony. That night, the meal was simple: grilled meat, salad, tea. But I sat at the table like I was sitting on the edge of a new life. My heart thudded so hard I could barely swallow. When dessert came and my mother poured the last cup of tea, I took a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff. "Mom, Dad, I have good news." The table went still. My father squinted at me like he already didn't like whatever was coming. "Yeah, what is it?" I pulled out the letter and slid it across the table. "I got a full scholarship to a university in New York," I said, and the words came out too fast because I couldn't contain them. "Finance major. I start this fall." For a moment, no one spoke. My mother froze with her teacup halfway to her mouth. My father leaned back, arms crossing slowly like a gate closing. Even the air felt heavier, like the room itself disapproved. Then my father's voice landed flat and cold. "Finance," he repeated, like he was tasting something rotten. "You applied for finance without telling us?" I swallowed. I didn't want to argue before I had the results. "I know you wanted medicine, but that's not what I want. I've loved finance for years." That's when Evelyn laughed. Not a normal laugh. A sharp little sound like glass clinking. "Oh my God," she said, leaning back like she was watching a comedy show. "Finance? Harper, what are you going to do with a bunch of numbers? Count money for other people?" I looked at her carefully. I remember forcing my voice to stay steady. "No, I'm going to build a career. I'm good at analysis. I want to help businesses make smart decisions. I don't want to spend my life in a hospital just because that's your dream." The words "your dream" hit something in my father. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You think that path is worth throwing away everything we planned for you?" "I'm not throwing anything away," I insisted. "I earned this. A full scholarship. You can't dismiss it just because it doesn't fit your plan. My father's jaw clenched. Finance isn't a career to build a life on, he said, disgust curling around every syllable. It's a leech's job. People who count money for the rich. I could feel my hands shaking under the table, so I pressed my nails into my palm. I'm not saying it's nobler than medicine, I said. I'm saying it's mine. That was the moment my mother finally spoke, and her voice was soft, but it didn't comfort. It cut. Harper, if you've decided to go a different direction, you must accept the consequences. My father nodded like she'd confirmed a verdict. If you don't study medicine, he said, don't expect this family to pay a single cent. No tuition, no housing, no allowance. You want to do it your way? Then handle it alone. The room tilted, because until then, some part of me had still believed family love was permanent. That they might be angry, but they wouldn't abandon me over a major, over a dream. I stared at them, waiting for someone, anyone, to blink first. So, if I don't study medicine, I said slowly, I'm not welcome here. My father didn't hesitate. That's right. My mother's eyes lowered like she couldn't bear to look at what she was doing. Your father is right, she whispered. We can't support you if you refuse the path we believe is best. I remember thinking, they're saying this like it's reasonable, like they weren't ripping their own daughter out of the family picture and tossing her into the street. Evelyn didn't even look guilty. She looked satisfied, like the universe had corrected itself. My throat burned, but I wouldn't give them tears. Not that night. I nodded once. All right, I said, and my voice surprised even me, because it didn't crack. I'll leave. I'll stand on my own, and I'll prove it. My father looked straight into my eyes. No anger, no sadness, just a chilling finality. Then leave, he said. And after a beat, like he needed to drive the knife deeper, and don't ever come back. No one spoke after that. My mother turned her face away. Evelyn picked up her phone like I'd already disappeared. My father sipped his tea like he hadn't just erased his daughter. I stood up quietly, took the scholarship letter back, and walked upstairs to my room. I closed the door behind me. And for the first time in my life, I understood what being truly alone felt like. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies. Just the raw, silent kind where the house is full of people, but none of them are yours anymore. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat on my bed in the dark and listened to the clock ticking, each second like a soft knock on a door that was never going to open again. I packed before sunrise. A worn backpack, a few changes of clothes, a notebook, running shoes. The scholarship letter I kept touching like it was proof I wasn't crazy for wanting more. At exactly 7 a.m., I walked downstairs. My mother was in the kitchen washing dishes. My father sat on the couch reading the newspaper. Evelyn was still asleep upstairs. No one looked at me. No one said goodbye. No voice called after me. I stepped outside with $2,000 to my name, the money I'd saved from odd jobs and birthday gifts, and the kind of quiet rage that doesn't explode. It crystallizes. And as I walked down the driveway, I made a promise to myself so calm it felt like ice. If they can throw me away this easily, then one day I'll build a life so undeniable the truth will find them, even if I never go looking for them again. New York didn't greet me with a fresh start. It greeted me with concrete, noise, and the kind of indifference that can swallow you whole if you're not careful. The first night I arrived, I stood outside a narrow building behind a small restaurant near Midtown, staring at a metal door marked Staff Only. The manager, a tired woman with sharp eyes, had looked me up and down and asked one question. You got experience? I lied. Yes. She didn't care if it was true. She cared if I could stand on my feet for 10 hours and keep my mouth shut. That's how my new life started. Not with inspiration. Not with freedom. With an apron that smelled like old oil and a cramped staff dorm that had a mattress so thin I could feel the frame under my spine. But it was clean. It was safe. And most importantly, it was mine. I worked full-time before school even started. Cash register, cleanup, stocking, anything. I learned how to smile at customers who snapped their fingers like I was a dog. I learned how to keep my hands steady when I counted change while my stomach growled from skipping meals. And every night, I'd lie there and stare at the ceiling, replaying my father's voice. Don't ever come back. Sometimes I'd catch myself whispering the words under my breath like a curse, like if I said it enough times, it would lose power. It didn't. I still carried that scholarship letter everywhere, folded neatly in my bag, inside a plastic sleeve like it was sacred. Whenever exhaustion started to win, whenever I felt myself slipping into that dangerous thought of maybe my parents were right, maybe this was too big, I would pull it out and read the words again. Full scholarship. Finance major. Proof that even if my own family refused to see me, the world had. When my first semester at university began, I moved into campus housing. It wasn't glamorous. A small dorm room with a battered desk, 2 roommates who were strangers, and a bunk bed that squeaked every time I turned over. But to me, it felt like freedom. Freedom meant I could eat ramen for a week and no one could call me ungrateful. Freedom meant no one could threaten to withdraw love as punishment. Freedom meant I could finally become myself. And I did, quietly, relentlessly. I studied during the day and worked at night. Teaching assistant, library clerk, cafeteria help, weekend shifts, holiday shifts, the kind of schedule that made time feel like a blur. My classmates went out for drinks and posted photos with captions like "living my best life." I went out for extra shifts, not because I wanted to be noble, because I had no one behind me anymore. Every bill was a cliff edge. Every late fee was a disaster. Every semester felt like crossing a river on stones that could slip at any moment. But I didn't slip. I was too stubborn, too angry, too determined to never be that girl in the driveway again, walking away with a backpack and nobody calling her name. There were nights I sat alone in the library long after everyone left. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me. Outside, the city glittered like it belonged to people who weren't afraid. I'd watch groups of students laughing as they walked back to their dorms, and something inside me would ache, not for parties, but for the simple fact that someone would notice if they didn't come home. Nobody noticed me. Nobody checked. Not my parents. Not my sister. 4 years passed like that. Quiet. Relentless. And I still tried. I hate admitting that part, but it's true. Because no matter how much I told myself I was done with them, some childish part of my heart still wanted to be chosen. So after I graduated with honors, after my name hit the dean's list and my academic advisor hugged me like I was her own kid, I did the one thing I swore I wouldn't do again. I reached out. That night I texted my mother. "I've graduated. The ceremony is this Saturday. If you, Dad, and Evelyn want to come, I'd be happy to see you." My phone showed read almost immediately. And then, nothing. No congratulations. No, we're proud of you. No, we can't come, but we hope you're well. Just silence so complete it felt like being erased. I sat there staring at the screen until it dimmed and went black. Then I stared at my reflection in it. Older, sharper, eyes tired in a way 18-year-old Harper could never have understood. And something inside me shut down. Not dramatically, not with tears. Just a door clicking closed. Graduation day came. I put on my cap and gown, smoothed my collar, and walked into the auditorium while ceremonial music echoed. The seats were packed with families, mothers waving, fathers holding cameras, siblings screaming names. I scanned the crowd. Left, center, right. No familiar faces. I told myself they might be late. A few minutes passed, then 30, then an hour. They called my name. Harper Wilson. I walked up to the stage, accepted my diploma, smiled for the camera like I belonged in the moment. The room erupted in applause. My classmates cheered. Their families stood up, proud and loud. And I realized no one would ever stand for me like that unless I built those people into my life on purpose. After the ceremony, I walked out into the bright daylight and didn't text my mother again. I didn't send another message. I didn't beg. I just stopped. And that was the day I truly became free. A strong record and honors degree didn't leave me unemployed for long. A few weeks after commencement, I got an offer from a top firm in Manhattan. Starting salary, $150,000 a year. I read that number so many times that I thought I might be hallucinating from exhaustion. When I signed the contract, my hand didn't shake. Not because I wasn't emotional, but because I'd trained myself not to show weakness, not to anyone. The first months were brutal. I was in the office before sunrise, out after dark. Numbers, meetings, strategy calls, spreadsheets that looked like entire cities. Complex, layered, alive. I loved it. It wasn't just money. It was control. It was the satisfaction of seeing systems work because I built them too. At night, I took freelance consulting jobs for startups. Anything to increase my income, anything to accelerate my savings. Friends told me I was burning out. I smiled and said, "I'm fine." But inside, I knew the truth. This wasn't burnout. This was survival, upgraded. By my late 20s, I had saved enough to make my childhood feel like a bad dream. Properties, investments, a portfolio that kept growing like a living thing. And somewhere in that climb, I met Liam Carter. It didn't happen like a movie. There was no dramatic collision in the rain. It happened in a quiet, unremarkable way, like the kind of steady thing you don't recognize as life-changing until it's already become part of you. He was invited to a networking dinner by a mutual colleague. Most of the people there were loud, polished, hungry for attention. Liam wasn't. He spoke when it mattered, listened when others performed. And when he looked at me, it wasn't like he was scanning for what I could do for him. It was like he was actually seeing me. Later that night, as we stood near the elevator, he asked softly, "Do you always look like you're about to win a war?" I blinked. "What?" He nodded toward my hands. "You keep clenching them, like you're holding yourself together." I laughed, but it came out thin. "Maybe I am." He didn't push. He didn't pry. He just said, "If you ever want to put that weight down for a second, you can." That was the first time in years I felt my chest loosen. Liam became the calm in my storm, the person I didn't have to perform for. But calm doesn't mean complication-free, because Liam came with a shadow. Her name was Sabrina Vale, his ex-girlfriend, the kind of woman who moved through rooms like she owned them, beautiful, connected, always smiling, but never with her eyes. Liam didn't talk about her much, only enough for me to understand the shape of her presence. "She likes being admired," he said once, a little tired, "and she likes winning." I shrugged like I didn't care. But something in me filed that away. Not out of jealousy, out of instinct. Because I knew women like Sabrina. Not the exact face, not the exact voice, but the type. The kind who can turn a story into a weapon and still look innocent while doing it. I didn't know then that she would matter later. I didn't know later would bring my past crashing into my present in the most twisted way possible. Because while I was building my life, while I was learning to breathe without my family's approval, fate was quietly arranging a reunion I never asked for. And it would happen in the one place I thought I was untouchable. The place I would eventually build with my own hands. Aurora by the sea. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Back then, I still believed the silence from my parents meant the story was over. I didn't know the story was simply waiting. Waiting for the moment it could hurt me again. In public. Money doesn't change who you are. It reveals what was already there. For me, it revealed two things very clearly. I had learned how to survive without love, and I had no intention of ever being powerless again. By the time I turned 30, my life looked nothing like the girl who left home with a backpack and a scholarship letter. My days were measured in meetings, risk assessments, and decisions that moved 6 and 7 figures with a signature. I had built a diversified portfolio: stocks, private equity, early-stage startups, and real estate across 3 states. I made mistakes too, lost tens of thousands in a single bad week once. But I didn't panic, because when you grow up knowing no one is coming to save you, fear becomes optional. I learned fast, I adjusted faster. And somewhere along the way, ambition stopped feeling like revenge and started feeling like alignment. Like I was finally living in the shape I was always meant to. That's when Nate called me on a Friday evening. "We've got a crazy idea," he said, barely containing himself. I leaned back in my chair, Manhattan glowing outside my window. Crazy ideas are kind of my brand. Nate laughed. "Okay, hear me out. Luxury beachfront resort. Destination weddings. Not the cookie-cutter kind, the kind people talk about for the rest of their lives." I almost said no out of habit. Then he mentioned the location. Oceanfront property. Sweeping views. Mild weather, year-round. Untapped. My mind shifted instantly. Numbers started arranging themselves. Capital requirements, revenue streams, seasonal demand, experience differentiation. Then Clara joined the call. A chef with years of experience in 5-star resorts. Precision in her bones. Standards that bordered on obsessive in the best way. "We don't want to build another venue," she said. "We want to build a memory." That's when I felt it. That familiar click. The same one I used to feel building paper cities on my bedroom floor. "I'm in," I said before they even finished the pitch. I invested the seed capital, designed the financial model, structured long-term growth. And more than anything, I shaped the philosophy. I didn't want luxury that felt cold. I wanted intention. I wanted couples to feel like they were stepping into a world built specifically for them, even if they never knew my name. We called it Aurora by the sea. Every detail mattered. Ceremonies bathed in golden light. Dinners under warm, hanging bulbs. Music that drifted like a promise. Staff trained, not just in service, but in awareness. And one thing I insisted on from the beginning. For our highest tier weddings, a co-founder would personally present a gift. Not because of ego, because respect should be visible. Within 2 years, we became one of the most sought-after wedding destinations on the East Coast. Couples flew in from New York, Boston, even Canada. Forums buzzed with praise. The Harper Wilson experience, they started calling it, though I never advertised my name. I preferred to stay behind the scenes. Power, I'd learned, didn't need an introduction. Through it all, my parents remained ghosts. No birthday messages. No congratulations when an article mentioned the resort. Nothing. At first, I still noticed the absence. Then, slowly, I stopped checking. 15 years had passed since I left that house, long enough for wounds to scar, long enough to believe some doors were sealed forever. Then, one afternoon, our event manager knocked on my office door. "Harper," she said, excited, "we've got a big one." She handed me the booking details. Platinum package, oceanfront garden, full buyout. I scanned the name of the bride and felt my stomach drop. Evelyn Wilson, my sister. I didn't breathe for a moment. 15 years of silence, and fate decided to reintroduce us like this. I closed the file calmly. Thanks. I'll handle my part as usual. Because for platinum weddings, one of the co-founders always attended in person. And that weekend, it was my turn. The day of the wedding, the resort glowed like it always did. White linens, fresh florals, staff moving with quiet efficiency. I arrived early, dressed simply, a neutral suit, no jewelry except my watch. I didn't expect recognition. And at first, I didn't get it. A black SUV pulled up near the entrance. 3 people stepped out. My father, my mother, and Evelyn, in white. She looked radiant, confident, untouched by time or consequences. For a moment, the sight was surreal, like watching characters from a dream walk into my reality. Evelyn was the first to notice me. Her smile faltered, her eyes narrowed. Then she scoffed. "I didn't know you worked here," she said sharply as they approached. "But stay out of sight. This is my day." I met her gaze, calm as stone. "Didn't expect to see you here either." She rolled her eyes. "What are you doing? Greeting guests?" "If that makes you comfortable," I replied. My mother stepped closer, her voice thin. "If you left this family, don't come back to disturb it. You're not one of us." I nodded slowly. "I know." That should have been the end of it. But Evelyn wasn't finished. She stepped forward, lifted a half-full water bottle, and without warning, threw it straight at my face. Cold water soaked my hair, my collar, dripped down onto the stone tiles I'd chosen myself years ago. She smirked. "Hope that wakes you up." I didn't react. I wiped my face calmly as our head of security approached. "Everything okay, Ms. Harper?" he asked respectfully. The question landed like a bomb. My father stiffened. My mother's eyes widened. Evelyn froze. I nodded to security. "All good," and walked away. That evening, the reception began like any other. Soft lights, music, champagne. Then our manager took the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "we have a special gift for the bride and groom, presented by the owner of Aurora by the sea." I stepped onto the stage. The room fell silent. Evelyn's face drained of color. I smiled politely. "My name is Harper Wilson, co-owner of Aurora by the sea." Then Clara stopped me. The gift was canceled. Security footage played. Evelyn throwing the water. Gasps, whispers, guests leaving. Evelyn screamed it was my fault. I said nothing, because I didn't need to. The truth had already done the work for me. And when Clara delivered the final line, naming me the founder, the investor, the architect behind it all, the silence was absolute. That night, I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. Finished trying. Finished hoping. Finished pretending blood mattered more than behavior. 1 week later, they came to the lobby, begging, apologizing, asking for another chance. I looked at them, smaller than I remembered. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I don't belong to you anymore." And I meant it, because family without love is just obligation. And I had already paid mine in full. The resort was quiet again a week later. Not the peaceful quiet of early mornings before guests wake, but the kind that comes after something loud has burned itself out, after gossip finishes chewing and finally gets bored, after headlines become screenshots and screenshots become whispers. I was in my second-floor office reviewing a partnership contract when the internal phone rang. "Ms. Harper," the receptionist said carefully, like she was stepping on glass. "There are 3 people waiting in the main lobby. They say they're your parents and your sister." I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window instead. The ocean stretched endlessly, steady and unmoved by human drama. Waves didn't ask permission before they erased footprints. They just did it. "Thank you," I said finally. "I'm on my way." When I stepped into the lobby, they stood up all at once. It was strange how small they looked. Not physically, but emotionally. Like the authority I remembered had drained out of them the moment they realized the world hadn't collapsed without them. My father was the first to speak. His voice didn't carry the same certainty it used to. "Harper, I was wrong," he said. No anger, no command, just tiredness. I was stubborn. We mistreated you. I know that now. My mother reached for my arm, then stopped herself, unsure if she was allowed. We're not asking you to forget, she said softly. We want to start over, please. Evelyn stood behind them, hands clenched, eyes red. I don't have an excuse, she said, barely above a whisper. What I did was cruel. I was angry. I was jealous. Her voice broke. I'm sorry. I studied their faces. 15 years ago, I would have given anything for these words. I would have folded myself smaller just to earn a nod, a touch, we're proud of you. But standing there now, all I felt was distance. Not hatred. Distance. I believe you're sorry, I said calmly, but that doesn't mean I can go back. My father frowned. Harper, we're family. I met his eyes. Family doesn't exile their daughter for choosing her own life. Silence swallowed the room. I don't hate you, I continued, but I learned how to live without your approval, and I won't return to being the person I had to abandon just to survive. My mother's shoulders shook. Evelyn cried openly now. I felt nothing dramatic, no triumph, no revenge, just clarity. Love isn't something you can buy back with late apologies, I said. It's not a receipt you return once you realize the cost was higher than you expected. I stepped back. This is where I choose myself. They didn't argue. They didn't chase. For the first time in my life, they had no power left to threaten me with. I turned and walked away. The next morning, I stood on the balcony overlooking the resort. Staff moved below, preparing for another wedding. Fresh flowers, polished glass, new beginnings for people who still believed in them. Liam joined me, handing me coffee without a word. He didn't ask how it went. He never did. He understood that some things didn't need to be dissected to be honored. A young staff member approached, excitement barely contained. Ms. Harper, she said, a new couple just checked in. They chose us because they read your story online. They said they could feel the honesty in this place. I smiled, not because of the praise, but because honesty, real honesty, was something I'd fought for my entire life. I didn't need a family that loved me conditionally. I built one that chose me. 15 years ago, I walked away from the people who brought me into this world. Today I know I wasn't wrong, because being born into a family is accidental. Being loved is a choice, and I finally chose myself.